I touched on it earlier on about doing deep work. I think in a world that's moving faster and faster, to feel productive and jump from task to task, doing this, that, and everything is easy to get lost in. It's really important to stay on track to the work that really moves the needle forward.
Our featured speaker today is the founder and creative director at VidUps, a streamlined media creation company that is on a mission to empower brands with content that inspires action. Alasdair, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. And I was wondering if you might just sort of lead us off talking about some of your background, maybe your experience growing up, and if you feel that there were some early life events or people that really came into your life that had a strong influence on who you've become.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I grew a passion for video production. And I think I always envisioned myself working in narrative film. So to work as a film director and create something like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Those were kind of the films that I grew up with and was part of my childhood. And I created little movies with my friends in the summer holidays. And someone that really kind of inspired me was an uncle of mine. He had a video camera. At the time, we didn't have smartphones, etc. So access to that was kind of a big thing for me, and being able to create storyboards and then go and film it with his camera was great fun.
Absolutely. It's cool to have that sort of early exposure to something that you grew up being passionate about. Now, the modern day has everyone has their own camera, has their own, way to record. People have their own platform to sort of share through social media and things like that. But obviously there's a big distinction between what comes out of me with my smartphone recording something and like a more professional setting. How do you think that sort of changed the industry in regards to audio, video, content creation sort of thing?
Yeah, good question. Nowadays, with your smartphone, you can film better quality footage than I could have filmed with the professional camera that I had as a kid. I think the important thing to focus on, and it's always been the most important thing, is the story. What's the content of the video? And I think it's also particularly important nowadays where we've got AI coming up, AI tools where you can create all sorts of amazing things visually. What's most important, though, still remains the story.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think I'm probably a little bit biased in that, but I do definitely see that it has changed. I actually have a background in photography myself, and it definitely has changed the game that so many people have access to. I noticed that my phone will take like a composite image, like basically it's taking a picture of the background and taking a separate picture of the subject and like the best exposure for both and then putting them together, which is a process that used to take hours and still does take quite a bit of time in a professional camera. So I also appreciate your point, Spencer. So I guess, Alistair, how do you help your clients find value in what you do? Like being able to really be a creative that builds stories for brands, kind of like we were talking about offline, and really shows, helps them show the world like the values that they stand for visually and audio through audio.
Right, yeah. So at VidOps, we produce professional content for various different brands. We work primarily for other businesses, so we're B2B, and the businesses that we work for, they're usually also B2B themselves. The key value proposition that we provide is low cost professional video content that's accessible to smaller businesses. The way that we do that is through a network of videographers. We've got just over 1,300 videographers registered with VidUps now. And it's my mission to try and support them to get work and support them to be able to achieve the best work that they can. So I want to build this community of videographers where they can support each other, share knowledge, and get work. From a client side, it means that then they don't have to pay for expensive travel costs. And if they wanted to book a videographer for, say, an hour or 2 hours in New York, let's say they're based in London, they can do that. They can book through VidOps a videographer at short notice in New York. That's the idea anyway.
Cool. Obviously, earlier on in your career, you sort of worked for a couple of different companies. Screen Ray Productions, I think, was one. Imaginarium Studios, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. How did you go from like sort of working within the same sector, but figuring out what you wanted VidOps to be and deciding to move from working for someone else into working for yourself?
I mean, I went to film school. I studied cinematography and directing, screenwriting, and all the different technical elements of video editing, etc. And then I worked freelance as a videographer and an editor. And alongside that, I worked for the Imaginarium Studios. And I was kind of at this crossroads in my career where I was torn between the freelance work, working on all sorts of different corporate videos, and the narrative productions. Imaginarium Studios, what they do, which is super cool, is motion capture. So the guy that founded it is Andy Serkis.
That like with play?
Motion capture is where you typically wear a suit with like little reflectors on it. And then there's a number of cameras around the room that can capture those markers on the actor. You can also, I mean, the technology's changed a lot since I worked there. Now they have something called active markers where they've got a battery on the suit and the little markers. I think it's infrared signal for the cameras to then pick up around the room, kind of like a helmet with a camera on a stick to then capture the facial expressions in more detail.
This is like what they would have done for like the Hulk, right?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the Hulk, but definitely for Avatar, King Kong. Whilst I was there, we were working on Star Wars, we worked on the Avengers, we worked on Planets of the Apes.
Oh, awesome.
It sounds super cool, but it was very slow paced, years of production.
Yep, that makes sense.
Whilst I was working there, just so you know, I was just bringing people tea and coffee. I was a runner. But it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
And how did that feed into you sort of starting your own thing?
Right, yeah. So at the same time, I was working freelance doing various different corporate videos. Sounds terrible to say, but maybe it was partly because I made more money doing that. But I also really enjoyed it because you'd go from one project to the next project and you meet different people, you'd hear about their stories. It's a bit more diverse than working on, even though those big movies are super cool, you're working on tiny details for extended periods of time.
That makes a lot of sense. It just sounds like you had more of a passion too for the corporate, I don't want to say corporate world, but what you do now, right? You really showcase who brands are and help them come up kind of with an advertising campaign. Am I right about that?
The type of videos that we typically produce vary, but the most common production is a testimonial video. Like I mentioned, we work primarily B2B, and the clients we work for are also B2B. So they're looking to get social proof in their brand. And one of the ways in which they can do that is by getting one of their clients to speak on camera about their product or service. It's kind of like when you go and order something on Amazon, for example, you're going to order something from the place that's got reviews rather than one without. But the advantage of the testimonial video over written reviews, it's a lot more trustworthy because you can't fake that. Well, maybe now you will be able to with AI, who knows?
Yeah, I definitely understand how facial expression too makes it feel more authentic. So what was the turning point for you really in starting your own business as opposed to, just working for another business that did something similar?
A mistake, to be honest. If I was to do it all again, I'd work for someone else to begin with and get experience working for someone else. Try and learn on someone else's money rather than spending your own money starting a business, trying to figure it all out as you're going along. You can do so many different things, but you don't need to do it all at the same time. Even if you have aspirations to start a business of your own, it might be better to work for someone else in the early stages of your career. That would be my advice, having not done that.
That's a good point. What you said about like learn on someone else's dime, I think is an underappreciated approach. But I also suspect to some degree there's a matter of like the lesson doesn't fully impact you when it's on someone else,
Yeah, true. You learn best from your own mistakes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We originally obviously hired Kane when he was under Hunter Digital, I think was the term.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you guys sort of joined together in a sense. How did that go down? What was sort of the approach there?
So prior to working with Kane, we had a business model whereby we tried to manage all of the post production in the same way that we managed the videographers, i.e., a distributed network of editors. And whilst that might be possible in the future, it was just very challenging to manage all of the different productions. So we decided to take on, it wasn't really a decision, it just happened naturally over time. Kane started doing more and more of the projects, and then eventually we stopped distributing them across to different video editors. Apart from certain projects where there's complex animation and we wanted someone that's got those specific skills. But when it came to all of the video editing and the podcasts, that's where Kane then took on all that work. And now he's working at FitOps full time.
That's super exciting. It seemed like such a smooth transition from our side of it. So whatever went on behind the scenes, it seems like you did a pretty good job with that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's good to hear. We did have a whole process of moving everything across. A couple things got changed, but yeah, mostly it was quite straightforward. I mean, before making the switch, Kane was already working here as a contractor. So it wasn't a huge transition. It just went from working 3-4 days a week to now he's here every day of the week.
Sure. Well, I'm sure he appreciates steady employment too, as
Yeah.
someone that's had multiple jobs myself. So how do you, I know you said, like the testimonial video has kind of become your bread and butter. How do you decide, which kind of products you should offer, I guess I should say, or, which avenues you really pursue the most? Because in media creation, obviously you could be doing end to end, like marketing for companies. How did you decide, which things have most value for you to really pour time and energy and manpower into, and which you want to leave, to other companies and services?
Yeah, right. I mean, we can do a whole load of different types of projects, and we do, but I think it's good to focus on a specific niche in terms of what you're going to market, because, I mean, as a small business, we've got limited resources. And it's challenging to get new customers in. And so we just decided this is a great product that we can try and push forward with our sales and marketing efforts. And off the back of it, oftentimes I'll be having a conversation with a lead, and in that meeting, we might be discussing other types of content as well. So even though that the testimonial videos is what we pushed to discuss at the beginning, it may well be that then we're talking about doing photography or an animation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've actually, on a relatively recent episode, we talked about like the process of figuring out the pricing for product you offer. Did have a book here previously, but as a sort of community, we spun out of Disciplined Entrepreneurship, which is like a particular book that talks about a bunch of steps for entrepreneurship. And one of the steps is pricing, like how you sort of figure out what to price yourself, How did you go about that process? Because like different businesses, different professionals and experts in recording and editing, all that sort of thing. I feel like there's a huge amount of variety there. How do you figure out how to like structure your pricing?
Right. Yeah. Great question. Also, disciplined entrepreneurship. That sounds something that I could take advantage of. I'm very much not disciplined. I find myself working on all sorts of different things during the week and getting distracted.
It is good retroactively. So I do recommend that book.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, so in terms of our pricing, it's actually something that we're working on at the moment. I was attending a webinar the other day to do with pricing. And one of the key things that was mentioned was that you need to charge based on outputs, not inputs. Obviously, it needs to be profitable. So you need to calculate what are the inputs that are going to be required for this particular product or service. But it's more important from a sales perspective that the person that you're presenting to can see what they're going to get out of it rather than what you're going to put into it. They shouldn't be too concerned by how you're going to do the work. That's all happening behind the scenes. Output-based pricing is something that we're working on improving so that it's focused on the deliverables and how the video content can be used by a business rather than you get 2 cameras or 3 cameras. Those details can be mentioned as well, but that shouldn't be the primary focus, I think, with pricing. Another thing that I think is really important is to have different tiers or different options to suit different budgets. And what was mentioned in this webinar again was that by having different tiers, you almost end up bartering against yourself. So rather than the negotiation being, oh, are they going to go with you or a competitor? The negotiation is, are they going to go with option A or option B that you're offering? And you need to get those prices right, because otherwise it should almost be such that you don't really mind which of those options the client goes with. Obviously, you'd rather they go with the bigger deal value, but no matter which option they choose, it's still good business. That's key. That you're making a decent profit margin on each one. You're not over promising on anything.
I think it's a really wise point. And having multiple, price options that you're comfortable with delivering on. And then the whole like Starbucks mentality of like, and I don't know if this is I think this is an analogy that translates, but they have like this really ridiculous size, this really small size, and really you're planning on them choosing the thing in the middle. That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like you've had a good advice, good input into your pricing structure. Even though I know there's always more that we can actually discussing a couple different models and why they might work or not work. So there's always more to explore there, but sometimes it just reinforces that you made a good decision. So it sounds like you've got a good grasp on that. So what did you feel least prepared for, or maybe most surprised by when you started your own business?
Process. I think that getting new customers is really challenging. And I had this flawed mindset to begin with of, oh, we're just going to provide a great service and the customers will turn up. And the reality is that that doesn't work. You need to put quite a lot of work into getting new customers. We did all sorts of different things, working on the brand. And then we tried outbound lead generation, so sending email sequences to people. We tried Google ads, pay-per-click ads. Yeah, I mean, it's really challenging, but the method that we've got now that seems to be working very well is to reach out to people by email through that email sequencing. So it's outreach, and then on LinkedIn, so connecting with people that there's a bit of tracking involved to see who's engaging with those emails. So then we'll connect with those that are engaging most via LinkedIn, and then from there try and book a meeting. And the goal really is to get a meeting booked. And I think that making the steps as small as possible and as easy as possible for your prospect is key to success. So by making it quite a brief meeting, it's only 15 minutes, there's no commitment to purchase. It's really the purpose of the meeting is an intro, and we're going to chat about your business and the goals that you've got, challenges that you've got with your marketing, and how we might be able to help support that with video content. And off the back of that, then usually I will try and arrange a follow-up meeting, and that follow-up meeting will then be a little bit longer and oftentimes in person where possible. And yeah, that's kind of our process, constantly trying to improve it. But yeah, I think that that's where I was a bit naive when first starting the business. And I think that you've got to have a system to generate new business.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
From what you just talked through, you've tried quite a few different approaches to customer acquisition. Different, focusing on the brand, trying outreach through email, trying different things. Would you say that there are methods that are lauded or considered to be good that in your experience actually didn't help at all?
I think whatever you do, you've got to do it well. That sounds terrible, but you need to have focus. So if you're going to do something, you've got to do it properly. And with the Google Ads, for example, I realized that it was a bit all or nothing because you can't just, you've got to manage the whole pay-per-click campaign. And it's not my area of expertise. And to get a consultant to manage that process is an additional cost. And then if you're applying that overhead cost to the Google pay-per-click campaign, you kind of need to pot a hole and more spend in it for it to cover that overhead. And so I decided, okay, actually, that's not going to be work for us at this stage. And I think actually, for most small businesses, paid ads is probably not the best option. There's so many other ways in which you can generate business for free. I say for free, it's still obviously going to take a lot of time and effort, and there may be some little things that you need to pay for. But yeah, there's definitely better ways to generate business than through paid ads for small companies.
In starting businesses in entrepreneurship, it's a common requirement to be able to say no, right? To like either turn down customers, turn down partners, turn down, opportunities, whatever, just because like the focus, as you've just said, is so important. Have you had any experiences where you've sort of had to figure out how to say no? And do you have a strategy for deciding what situations you need to say no in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've had both scenarios with regards to saying no to clients. We've usually managed to find a way to work with most people. But when it comes to endless changes, we've kind of set out certain boundaries in our pricing structure that's agreed upon at the beginning. You get a certain number of rounds of edits based on the package that you've opted for. And then beyond that, there's just a small cost for additional changes. And yeah, I've had to then obviously have those difficult conversations with clients sometimes. Sometimes you're torn between, oh, I don't want to lose this business and this client is great for us. And you've just got to put your foot down in a friendly way and say, like, at this point, there is just going to be an additional fee for this work. Yeah, but sometimes then, yeah, you can see actually this client's worth so much. We'll just let it slide. It's a balance. It's difficult. And then, yeah, in terms of saying no to videographers, they're all vetted. So, I mean, I'll go through their showreel and ask what equipment they use and just see that they're confident to chat with the client and present the brand. And there are scenarios where you have to unfortunately say no to someone that you can't work with them yet. It may be that they can come back in a year's time or so.
I get the sense that you're someone that can say no when you need to, but you don't prefer to.
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer to try and keep everyone happy and provide the best quality service that we can. Oftentimes, we'll get deeply involved in a client's project, and you're invested into it, and you want to see it completed anyway. So when they're asking for additional changes, you want to do it anyway.
Sure. And sometimes that is sort of the client showing how a product could evolve too, or something that you hadn't thought of pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I think also there's an element with that where is it the client's fault or have I not supported them to work out what they needed in the first place? And it's a very difficult one to answer, but we're the experts when it comes to video production. And if I look back then at the pre-production process, I could have probably supported them to figure this out better. And now that they're asking for this change at the end, that's fair enough.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you're right. You're the expert on your product offering, and they're not thinking, about all the elements that you already have thought about, like what will be covered. And they're just concerned that not everything they need is included, but that it is. That makes a lot of sense. I'd like to actually pass to another community member that has a question for you. Giovanni, do you have a mic to talk?
Yes, thank you, Nancy, and thank you for the nice insight. I will have a question related to the discussion that is, what's a project or industry you haven't applied your skills to yet, but would you love to explore? Thanks a lot.
Hey, Giovanni, great question. An industry that we haven't applied our skills to yet, that I'd love to get involved with. Because of the nature of video production, we're pretty industry agnostic. We work with a huge range of industries. I think what's most important from a videographer's perspective is to just focus on what you find interesting. So I have previously, worked with a huge range of different companies and just whoever turns up. But I think it might be fun to just go and create video content for industries that I find interesting. So I'm a bit of a geek, and I like all things to do with DIY. So recently, my girlfriend bought me one of these Virgin Media experiences to drive a digger. So I went to this training center and I had a 90-minute excavator training or driving session. It was great fun, basically playing in a giant sandpit with a big machine. So
Did you get a video there?
yeah. So that's the funny thing. I was then chatting with the guy. He then introduced me to the owner of the company. And I had a meeting with the owner there. And he straight away said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do some testimonial videos." So it hasn't happened yet, but I'm really excited for that particular project because it's in an industry that me as a big kid, I find interesting.
I really like that. I love hearing when people sort of have opportunities to explore their passion through their work. I think that's really cool. Now, as a little bit of a segue to entrepreneurship conceptually, now that you've been doing this for, I think on your LinkedIn, it says over 9 years, you've been almost 10 years, actually. What do you think would be sort of the key characteristics that you'd say a founding team or a founder needs to have to succeed in entrepreneurship?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that lots of different ideas. I think that having discipline is really important. Having a good work-life balance, to caveat that, is important. So not letting it become all consuming and taking time away, even when you're still working on something, if you're super excited, it's good to then stop whilst you're still excited, because then when you come back to it, you can jump straight in. I think there are various different strategies to maintain that discipline when you're working for yourself, such as time boxing. In terms of the type of work that really moves the needle forward, I think it's deep work that's most important. We can find ourselves often working on, well, I find myself working on all sorts of different bits of admin and or jumping between tasks and doing this and doing that. But what I think makes the biggest difference in the long run is the work on the business. So taking a step back and really working on the business rather than in the business.
So you can't let yourself get distracted by like sort of the nitty gritty too much.
Yeah. So one of the things we touched on earlier on was to do with the customer acquisition and business development. And there's kind of unlimited things that you can do there. And I think it's very kind of the opposite of deep work. You're just jumping around doing all these different, well, that's what I find myself doing. Clicking around on LinkedIn, looking at this person, chatting with this person. Whereas deep work might be something where I really like this tool called Figma. It's actually designed for creating UI designs, and I use it as a giant whiteboard. And I like to create mind maps in that. And for example, our pricing strategy, which we touched on earlier on, I've created a board in Figma, and I've got loads of different ideas. And here's some competitors, there's inspiration from them. And then here are different tiers. I've then gone and put ideas into ChatGPT and then brought those ideas back into that whiteboard. But I think that sitting down and doing that deep work is where you can really make the biggest difference. But yeah, your question also revolved around building a team. And I think that with regards to building a team, it's really important to go slowly, go one step at a time, try not to rush things, especially if you're hiring people. It's a big cost, it's a big responsibility, and I think it should be taken very seriously. Yeah, I don't think it's wise to just hire a whole load of people and then try and get everyone working together. I think it takes time, and it's better to onboard one person and then get them settled, and then they can become part of the process of onboarding the next person, because they can support with the training and explaining how things work. And I would recommend also having a co-founder. I don't have a co-founder. I work on my own, and it can be quite lonely. I've got Kane here full time, and it's super exciting. It's fun working together. But I think having someone where you really fully share the business journey is super valuable. Now, that's not from experience, because I don't have a co-founder, but from the perspective of someone that doesn't have a co-founder, it can be quite lonely. And I can imagine there are challenges also with working with someone else. But yeah, that's just my perspective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I really appreciate retroactively that you've kind of like taught yourself some lessons like, I did it this way and it worked, but I kind of wish I did it this way. And I really take seriously what you're saying about onboarding people too. I mean, there's so many books I feel like that have good advice about this, and yet companies will just kind of hire based on skill set or hire in bulk, if you will, rather than take that seriously, that you're building the culture with each person you invite in. I think that's really notable that that's something that you've taken so seriously. So I heard you kind of touch on work-life balance, and that's something that we often talk about in these interviews. And I wanted to ask you, how have you found, like, I know there's no perfect, but how have you found a balance for yourself between your work and your family life and the other things that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I think over time it's changed. I've gone through phases where I'll work super hard on the business, but I think having a weekend is really important. Taking time away to go and do something that's fun for me. I have a whole load of different hobbies. I like all sorts of different things. And like I said, I'm a bit of a geek, and I like DIY. I mean, the other day I was taking my motorbike apart, put some new brake pads in, and did a whole service to it. So that was a fun evening, and I managed to get it all back together to then drive somewhere the following day.
That's the important bit, getting it all back together.
And the brakes work, which is crucial.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, in terms of work-life balance, you're going to have to work more than a typical 40-hour week. You're going to have to say no to things sometimes. You're going to have to turn things down. And I think it's really important to know what's valuable to you for your free time. And one of the things that I have done is to cut certain things out that I find that don't really add to my life. So although we're a video production company and we create videos for social media, I don't have any social media on my phone.
Really?
I don't have Instagram. Well, I have Instagram. I don't use it. I remember the last time I went on Instagram. And Facebook I use for Facebook Marketplace to buy and sell different things like motorbike parts or whatever else. LinkedIn, okay, I use LinkedIn a lot, but I have a plugin for Chrome that blocks the newsfeed. So when I click on the home option, I don't have a newsfeed to get distracted and scroll through things. It comes on from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. So outside of those hours, then I do have a newsfeed again. So I can then catch up on the world and what's going on.
You'll have to send me a link to that extension, I think.
It's crazy though how easy it is to get distracted by these kind of. I mean, that's the way they're designed. They're designed to captivate your attention. And I found that no amount of discipline was going to work for me. I just need to get rid of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. One of our listeners, Andrew, actually had a question that I'm going to read out. He asked, he's curious if you're concerned about AI and other emerging tech that might be able to automate your work. Do you see this as a threat or opportunity or both or nothing at all?
I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And yeah, there's obviously an element of threat there with AI tools that can create visuals that are indistinguishable from video content captured by a videographer. But I think where we have used AI already is in the storyboarding phase. And that can be really good to align the client on what to expect. It can be really helpful to sort of visualize this is exactly how the video is going to be using AI. Another tool that we've used is for post-production. So it will automatically listen to ums and ahs and will cut them out, which is really clever. But yeah, I mean, it is something that is exciting and new. And I think that it will change the landscape of video production for sure. Will it be a threat to us? I don't know. I mean, with regards to testimonial videos, the whole point is that it's social proof, it's trustworthy. So if you can fake that, maybe it becomes less trustworthy when you can't tell whether it's real or not. Or maybe it becomes even more important in a world where we struggle to trust things that to then have testimonial videos that who knows? We'll see.
I think it's a really important. You already are using AI tools to effectively edit things at a faster pace, which is excellent. But in order for AI to get to the point where it really says, this is the best take, like this, is emotionally riveting, like the audience giving you feedback. I think we're a little ways away from that. Like it can tell you that, why am I trusting the opinion of the AI? Like, aren't we training it with real people who have real emotions? So I think we're getting there, but I feel like that part is going to take a lot longer for people to really trust versus like, oh, great, I have a tool that can cut out these audio gaps. I have a tool, that can make sure that everything calibrates color wise between these two cameras. Like there's so many helpful tools that are coming out, but I think we're a little ways away from it really giving us that human element that we feel, is human. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the technology is evolving quickly and quicker and quicker. I mean, it could well be quite a long way off before it takes all of our jobs.
And the fact that you're figuring out how to incorporate, I think that's the staying power. I know that there is all this fear that like it's just going to wipe out jobs. And companies could do that. I think that they're going to pay for it if that's how they deal with it. But that, slow progression of this is helpful, I'm going to include this in my process. I think that's how we'll see that successful merger personally. And you guys do a great job using the tools that you have to get things out expeditiously. We know from experience. So was there a time, when you've had to make a major pivot or really deviate from the plan that you had? How did you go about that? And looking back, is there anything you would change about that experience?
Yeah, that's a good one. End of 2019, the main strategy that we had was not testimonial videos, but rather events. We were targeting filming events, so to go to trade shows and all sorts. And then at the beginning of 2020, as we all know, that all came to an end. So that's where I think that we didn't know that was going to happen. But I think having a backup plan would have been good. We didn't have a backup plan, sort of ran around like crazy trying to figure out, okay, what we're going to do now. And we ended up focusing on animated content. And actually, out of it, we've ended up doing a lot more animations, not something that we thought that we were going to do. We were really primarily focused on live action content and this network of videographers. But yeah, so during COVID, we ended up adding a string to the bow in doing animation. And I think we do a really good job of the animations that we create. And now we do events again as well anyway. So it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, so the tree grows stronger for the wind, right? Like you came across this, well, everyone had this amazingly huge Black Swan event and you adapted to it. And now you have like broader capabilities because of it. It's so important to be able to adapt, but it can be absolutely brutal in the time, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, hindsight is one of those things where I think, oh, what if I had done this or done that? But I think it's important to just learn and move forward.
Now, we do have a final question that we do like to wrap up with. That question, I think we want you to sort of interpret it however makes the most sense to you. But basically, what words of wisdom or piece of advice would you like to leave us with today?
I touched on it earlier on about doing deep work. I think in a world that's moving faster and faster, to feel productive and jump from task to task, doing this, that, and everything is easy to get lost in. It's really important to stay on track to the work that really moves the needle forward. I'm not affiliated with him at all, but there's a guy called Cal Newport that has a book about deep work. Yeah, that's the only wisdom that I can give today is to focus on deep work.
Well, thank you so much for that and for everything else that you shared with us today. We really appreciate it. You taking this time and just sharing from your personal and professional journey.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun. One of the things that I find challenging is speaking publicly. So this has been really valuable to me as well. So thank you so much. I usually find myself behind the camera, but now I'm in the spotlight. It feels a bit strange. So thank you so much for having me here. And
thank you for being brave and vulnerable. I know from experience it is difficult to go from being behind the camera to being in front of it. So I appreciate your willingness to try that on with us.
Yeah, no, thank you. I feel excited to do more like this, get more in front of.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And thank you everyone who joined us, Spencer and I. team behind Founders. Feel very fortunate to be part of this community with you and for the opportunity to bring you cooperative learning experiences like this one to you each week. So please feel free to join us at the same time next week. We'd also love to hear your nominations. And Alasdair, if you have anyone that you think would benefit from this experience, we'd love to hear about that and get to know them. And in the meantime, we invite you all to listen to our edited podcast that you can find under Founders Voyage on your favorite podcast platform or directly on our website at foundersvoyage.org that Alasdair and his team help us edit. And if you would like to support the Founders Voyage podcast, you can do that through our Patreon, patreon.com/foundersvoyage. And you can also connect with us on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we wish you all a great rest of your afternoon, evening, and morning.
Thank you so much, Al.
Thank you very much.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.